The relationship between the British and the Sikhs, spanning almost 200 years, is examined in a new book that's just been published. It takes readers through anecdotes and important events highlighting that very special relationship. And it's been written by Leicester's very own Gurinder Singh Mann, who's a historian and head of the Sikh Museum Initiative. And I'm delighted to say that Gurinder joins me on the line now. Evening, Gurinder. Thank you for joining us here on Radio Leicester.
Good evening.
Just tell us about this relationship, which has been described as rich and remarkable. Now, not many people may think of it in that or those terms in particular. So how have you described it as rich and remarkable?
I think the key thing about the book is that whilst we look at the actual description of the British Sikhs in one type of lens, which is normally we associate the Sikhs with, say, World War One, World War Two, for instance, and their participation. I wanted to actually draw on the actual anecdotes which started in the 18th century, for instance. So the idea being to actually highlight some probably unknown kind of instances where the British did actually see the Sikhs, and as a result of that, I've kind of combined all these different kind of descriptions from illustrators, from different kind of vantage points to actually bring this actual book together, essentially.
Now, just talk us through the research that you had to do to find all these anecdotes and the stories in this book.
I think there's a combination of field trips to India. So I actually visited the battlefields of the Anglo-Sikh Wars, which are actually one area of the book itself. I did quite a lot of research across various libraries like the British Museum, British Library, like for instance, and even archives all the way up into Scotland as well. So there's been a kind of vast range of resources, and obviously various relics and artifacts which are kept in various museums as well.
And I understand that there's a special Leicester connection to that relationship as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so what I wanted to do with the book was actually just focus on a couple of aspects of that. And one concerned the role of Christian missionaries when they actually came into India as well. And the Leicester board, or should we say from Leicester, William Carey was a Christian missionary whose actual church is actually based, or they commemorate in terms of a museum at Central Baptist Church on Charles Street. So that's one example. And another example is that a Sikh manuscript from the Anglo-Sikh Wars, which we actually showed in our exhibition some years ago, is actually kind of photographed, and it's from the University of Leicester, amongst other things.
Yeah, so obviously, and also you mentioned the glorious history that the Sikhs have, in particular, as soldiers. Their bravery has been well documented, and that relationship with the British Army obviously endures to this day as well. But also blotted through history, there have been very difficult moments as well between that relationship. I'm thinking of things like the Jallianwala Bagh, where the massacre took place in the 19th century. I'm also thinking of, the hanging of Bhagat Singh, for example. Does your book touch on, those strained moments as well with the British Empire?
It doesn't, because the book actually is circa 1700 to 1900. So whilst those are kind of difficult moments between the relationship, they are not focused in this particular book. But what it does focus on is this discovery phase, in a sense. So as a result, my cover has General Bagheil Singh taking over Delhi in 1783, and it's a precursor to this kind of relationship in a sense as well. So it kind of goes through this kind of these nuances which people have probably never heard of before. So it's drawing out these rich stories which possibly most people have never heard before.
Indeed. We talk about the Sikh army, the soldiers, and their bravery is so well documented. And that's led to that very special kind of bond with the British Army and the Sikhs in particular, hasn't it?
No, absolutely. And, what I wanted to do was, because it focuses up to 1900, I wanted to actually show how the Sikhs were recruited, because after the Anglo-Sikh Wars, the Punjab was annexed to the East India Company, but then as a result of that, they did realise the actual fighting prowess of the Sikhs, and as a result, they were recruited in various military campaigns all across the world, actually. This is many, many years before we even get to World War One and World War Two. So it kind of does show you how long this connection has really been, and the key areas that it all starts from the 18th century. So I wanted to go back a few hundred years, essentially, from what we kind of generally recognise.
And does that sort of relationship still endure today, away from the sort of the military aspect, if you like, between the two parties?
I think so, to some extent. I think, British-born Sikhs are really kind of, grateful for this relationship that the Sikhs do have in this country. I mean, but quite rightly, you've noticed that there has been certain incidents which, does sometimes kind of doesn't mar the kind of relationship, but does actually put people on a back foot, essentially. So what we try to do is within our organisation as well is, try to promote this kind of great relationship between British and Sikhs through various things, projects, exhibitions, and in this particular case, a book as well, which is kind of just showing, you're quite right, the difficulties as well as some kinds of positive kind of relationships which took place from time back, actually.
Absolutely. Well, with the current lockdown situation, people are always looking for things to read, and it sounds like a great read. Where can people get the book, Gurinder?
The key place to get the book from is from the publishers itself. The Hellion is the Hellion book, so it's www.hellion.co.uk. So they're a military publisher, and they've got a vast range of military books, and this is one of their key books in relation to the Sikhs in their catalogue.
Terrific stuff. Well, good luck with that, Gurinder, and thank you so much for joining us here on Radio Leicester to tell us all about it. That's Gurinder Singh Mann, a local historian and head of the Sikh Museum Initiative.